Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
Molly, in one of Cody's shirts, and Cody, in Long John's, come downward at the forces after a marathon of lovemaking. Molly stayed longer than she originally planned and notes she should get home to her mama and Scout. Cody looks outside and says she's not going anywhere in this storm. Molly also checks her emails and freaks out over some big news. Cody presses her, and she explains she wrote a western/frontier love novel, and that's why she was asking him so numerous buckaroo related questions these once many months. Molly tells him that she wrote novels when she was youngish, and this is her first bone since Law Academy. She explains she wrote it for fun, but Christina went behind her reverse and submitted the handwriting to her old erudite agent. The dispatch was from her agent, who loved it. Molly says her agent is talking about a multi-book deal, but she's not going to pursue it because she has a job. Writing is only her hobby horse. Cody says it sounds like she's a great pen, and he can't stay to read it. She can't stay to get back into his cozy bed, so he carries her upstairs. Tracy and Martin bandy love. At Drew's, Tracy puts Martin's bourbon, which was in her heritage carafe, into Scout's thermos and hands it to him. He refuses to belt out of a Spratt's Pink Queen thermos. The bickering resumes, and the cuts fly. Tracy ultimately asks Martin why she hates him so much, and he reminds her that he ruined her life and destroyed his relationship with Lucy by leading him to believe she was cheating on him with Scott. Tracy laughs that Lucy is no big loss, and reminds him that he set up Lucy rolling in the hay with Scott, so she should have thanked him. Tracy also points out she's met all three of his spouses, and he has a type, beautiful women who all have the same docket, bleeding him dry. Martin points out the number of times she's been disassociated and the swindlers she's been involved with. Tracy says it was her decades of trial and error that helped her realize the love of her life when he came on. They get into her history with Luke, and how, yes, at first, he was after her plutocrat, but they soon realized what they had was real and worth fighting for. Martin reminds her that Laura was the love of Luke's life. Doesn't that bother her? Tracy says Luke and Laura's love had nothing to do with what she and Luke had, and they set up one another long after Luke and Laura's divorce. She believes their once loves, children, and broken hearts helped them see each other easily. Tracy tells Martin that he'll no way have a lasting relationship until he can look at a woman and see her for who she is, not what he wants her to be. A different side of Nathan. At the Benjen Cafe, Nathan gets the power on, and Lulu hopes her communication to Charlotte to stay put at the forces gets through. Lulu ultimately gets a communication from Charlotte that she's safe at the QS. Lulu decides to search around for some robes, but finds none. Rather, she finds a bottle of booze to keep them warm and entertained. She suggests they play Two Trueness and ALIE.AS they play. It comes up that Nathan knows the entire periodic table by heart. She asks why, and he says his pater drilled it into him as a sprat. Lulu recalls that he said his pater no way paid important attention to him because he was espoused, and Nina was their father's pride and joy. He says she's not wrong, and his father was a businessman, and because he was terrible at calculation, he forced him into wisdom. His father allowed. That would make him useful to him. Still, it soon came clear he couldn't do anything but study data, and so he lost interest in him. Lulu calls his pater and Burrow and an idiot for not seeing how awful and amazing he is. Danny and Charlotte enjoy some alone time. Danny and Charlotte break into the gatehouse, which is vacant since Michael and the kiddies moved up to the main house. They no way made it to Carly's and sought retreat there. She eventually gets her mama's dispatches and lets her know she's safe. Danny breaks out the Esmore making musts, which Charlotte has no way had. They soon sputter about their families, and Charlotte admits people don't like hearing about her audacious side and worldly knowledge, as it reminds them who her pater is. He says he gets that, as his aunts and grandma always sweat he's going to come more like his pater. As he grows up, Carly rescues Valentine, kind of. At Carly's, Valentine refuses to sit put any longer and is going to find Charlotte. Carly brings him a stronger fleece, a flashlight, and a hand warmer. He also heads out into the rudiments. Carly ultimately goes out herself and finds Valentine shivering and indurating at the end of her yard. She brings him back to the house. Carly lets him know Charlotte is safe and texted Lulu. She leads him to the fire to warm up and breaks out the good booze as well. Geesh, everyone is drinking their way through the storm. Valentine tells Carly she was right each on, going out there was a self-murder charge, and he didn't make it far. He'd to turn around, which is when she appeared. He assumes she was coming after him and wonders why she'd risk her life for him. She says she knows what it's like to lose a parent and a child, and so she understood why he went out there. Jason to the deliverance. Jason, who has set up Britt, busts into a cabin carrying her. Britt is passed out, and they're both soaked and freezing. She comes to and can't believe he set up her. He tells her that he'll always find her. Britt explains she was on her way back from Windermere, having rented her own boat, which started to sink in the rocky water and the storm. She allowed. She was going to die, again, until he came on in his boat. When she asks where they are, he says it's the harbor master's cabin on an islet near Ladle Island. The storm was too strong to make it back to the mainland. Jason helps the freezing Britt get warm by moving her near to the fire and snuggling her. Britt ultimately feels better and latterly jumps out of bed in a kerchief, saying, "That's one way of curing hypothermia." Yes, it appears they made love off camera. Latterly, Jason tells her that he knows she doesn't trust him fully, but he wants to help her. She tells him to help her, he needs to know the verity, and she's been lying to him the entire time. In the show's final moments. At the Forces, Cody comes downward, only to find Outback had been playing in Molly's work tote. He starts putting the contents back by and comes across her handwriting, Laredo Sunrise. He decides, with Molly asleep upstairs, to read through it. At Drew's, Martin believes there's someone for him out there, and Tracy jokes that there is, as he's an easy mark. He notes that between the two of them, he's still stalwart enough to put his heart on the line. At the gatehouse, Danny and Charlotte finish their s'mores, and she laughs that he has chocolate on his face. When she tries to brush it off, they end up kissing. Yes, they're in fact alternate relatives once removed. GH sure does love its kissing kinsman stories lately. At her place, Carly tells Valentine that up until now, she allowed. He was reprehensible, but the look on his face before he went out, that he was going to find Charlotte or die trying, and it made her realize he's not who she allowed. He was. He's realized the same about her. At the cafe, Lulu praises Nathan for being a good man. He came from plutocrat and didn't have to work, but he chose to come a bobby. Putting himself in peril to help people. He thanks her and wants nothing further than to be the man she sees him as. This leads to a kiss, which most observers presumably saw coming far down. At the harbor master's cabin, Jason knows Britt's been forced to lie to him, and she can trust him. Britt knows. She confesses that she's being forced to complete her father's final design, and if she doesn't, they'll take away her meds. He asks who they are. General Hospital recap for Wednesday, January 28th. Reveals that Jocelyn Jacks and director Ross Cullum traded falsehoods while Nathan West and Lulu Spencer got trapped together. Emma Scorpio Drake refused to let Giovanni Gio Palmieri go out without gloves, so there was a detention on them getting to Drew Kane's place to help Tracy Quartermaine. The road crack up being blocked, so Gio and Emma kept themselves busy with some passion at the apartment rather. At Drew's house, Tracy slipped in and was startled to find Martin Gray, who had popcorn and a fire going. Tracy sounded skeptical when Martin claimed Willow Kane knew he was there. Martin called Tracy out for taking advantage of Scout Quartermaine to get a key and rode with her after she claimed she was there for the Quartermaine heritages. When Tracy refused to let Martin throw her out, he suggested she could stay if she asked nicely. At Windermere, Jocelyn was ready to search the darkened castle when she heard a noise and hid. It turned out to be Cullum setting up candles, so Jocelyn pretended to call out to Uncle Lucas Jones. Jocelyn claimed she was heading to a blizzard party on a near islet before the storm got too bad and forced her to stop there. Joss explained her connection to Lucas and questioned Cullum, so he claimed to be Matthew the caretaker. That led to Jocelyn participating some brandy with Cullum as they changed plenitude of falsehoods. Jocelyn acted like she was just a boring council pupil who had lived a dull life in Port Charles. Although Jocelyn said what you see is what you get, Matthew set up that hard to believe. At Trina Robinson's place, she reluctantly gave Portia Robinson some herbal tea and Eiffels during an unanticipated visit. Portia did her stylish to explain her side of the cheating situation. But Trina was angry over Portia's pattern of backstabbings and maternity falsehoods. Portia claimed it was her intention to lie about this baby and that she always planned to get a DNA test. Since Portia could change her miscalculations, she wondered if Trina could accept what happened and still love her mama anyway. When Carly Spencer came up to her garret and saw Valentine Cassadine alone, she admitted Charlotte Cassadine was missing and would presumably be on her way over there. Valentine began to worry about Charlotte getting lost in the snowstorm and wanted to go out searching for her. Carly put a stop to that plan and pushed Valentine to be patient, so she suggested a game of checkers as a distraction. At the Quartermaine manse, Charlotte showed up and complained to Danny Morgan about Nina Reeves' treason after eavesdropping her discussion with Jack Brennan. Charlotte wanted to advise Valentine, so Danny said he'd go with her to Carly's house and handed some of Brooklyn Quartermaine's downtime apparel. Still, a phone alert came in advising everyone to sanctum in place, so Danny suggested Charlotte's Valentine visit would have to stay. At GH, Lulu turned to Nathan for help tracking Charlotte down and mentioned how she wanted to check on Butterscotch the steed before. After Rocco Falconeri completed his community service for the day, he got updates on the missing Charlotte news before Lulu transferred him to the Quartermaine manse. Lulu didn't want Rocco home alone in case the power went out and allowed. He could go hang out with Danny. Once Rocco arrived at the Q mansion, he saw the fire going and sounded to fate Charlotte's scarf along with her shoes by it. Still, Charlotte and Danny weren't around. Lulu and Nathan were forced to take sanctum at Bad Gen Cafe thanks to a downed tree. Since the snow was really coming down, Nathan suggested it looked like they were stuck there for the night. General Hospital spoilers say Nathan and Lulu have some close moments in their future, so stay tuned. As the winter storm tightened its icy grip around Port Charles, the town seemed to hold its breath, every street and shadow bracing for the weight of what was coming. Snow fell in thick, swirling sheets, baptizing the city in cold silence and turning every familiar corner into something strange and uncertain. It was the kind of night where truths could be buried just as easily as footprints, where lies drifted as freely as the snowflakes and emotions burned hotter than any fire struggling to stay alive against the bitter wind. At Windmere, darkness ruled the ancient halls like a living thing. The power was out, and the sprawling castle stood cloaked in shadows, lit only by the faint glow of moonlight filtering through frosted windows. Jocelyn Jacks crept through the corridors with her heart pounding in her ears, every step echoing too loudly for her comfort. She had come with a mission, to uncover whatever secrets Sidwell and his associates were hiding beneath this looming fortress. The storm outside felt like an ally, a natural distraction that had driven most people off the island and given her a window of opportunity. Then she heard a sound. It was soft at first, the scrape of something against stone, the whisper of movement in the dark. Jocelyn froze, her breath catching in her throat. Instinct took over. She ducked behind a heavy piece of furniture just as a faint glow appeared at the end of the hallway. A man emerged, carefully placing candles along the walls, their flames flickering to life one by one. The light danced across his face, revealing director Ross Cullum. Jocelyn's mind raced. She couldn't confront him directly, not yet. Instead, she stepped out of the shadows and called out in a cheerful, innocent voice, pretending she was looking for her Uncle Lucas. Cullum turned, clearly startled, but recovered quickly. Jocelyn spun a story about being on her way to a blizzard party on a nearby island, claiming the storm had forced her to stop at Windmere for shelter. Cullum, thinking on his feet, introduced himself as Matthew, the caretaker. What followed was a delicate, dangerous dance, a conversation built on half-truths and outright lies. They shared brandy in the candlelight, the warm burn of it cutting through the chill in their bones as they studied each other like chess players waiting for the other to make a mistake. Jocelyn painted herself as a boring college student with a dull life, someone who had never seen real danger, never lived on the edge of anything important. Cullum, as Matthew, listened closely, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. He told her that people who claimed to be exactly what they seemed rarely ever were. The words lingered between them, heavy with implication, as the storm outside held its agreement. Across town, in the warmth of Trina Robinson's apartment, a very different kind of storm was brewing. Portia Robinson stood awkwardly in the doorway, clutching a bag of herbal tea and cookies like a peace offering. Trina accepted them reluctantly, her expression guarded, her heart still raw from the revelations that had shattered her trust. The room felt too small for the weight of what needed to be said. Portia tried to explain herself, her voice trembling as she spoke of mistakes, of fear, of choices made in desperation rather than malice. She insisted she never intended to lie about the baby's paternity, that she had always planned to get a DNA test, always meant for the truth to come out eventually. But Trina wasn't ready to forgive. Her anger wasn't just about one lie, it was about a pattern, a history of betrayals that had chipped away at the foundation of their relationship. "You keep saying you didn't mean to," Trina shot back, her voice breaking. "But somehow, it keeps happening anyway." Portia's eyes filled with tears as she admitted she couldn't undo what she'd done. All she could do was ask for a chance to be loved despite her flaws, to be accepted not as a perfect mother, but as a human one. The question hung in the air, heavy and fragile, as Trina turned away, unsure whether her heart could bear another disappointment. Meanwhile, at Drew Kane's house, the fire crackled in the fireplace, casting a warm, golden glow across the living room. Tracy Quartermaine stepped inside, expecting to find an empty house and a quiet evening of sorting through family heirlooms. Instead, she nearly jumped out of her skin when she saw Martin Gray sitting comfortably by the fire, popcorn in hand like he owned the place. Tracy's sharp wit came out swinging. She demanded to know what he was doing there, and Martin, unfazed, claimed Willow Kane knew he was there. Tracy didn't buy it. She accused him of taking advantage of Scout to get a key, of worming his way into places he didn't belong. Their words turned into a bickering match, each one trying to outmaneuver the other with sarcasm and stubborn pride. When Tracy refused to leave, Martin smirked and suggested she could stay, but only if she asked nicely. The challenge in his voice was unmistakable, and Tracy bristled at the idea of bending to his terms. The tension between them was thick enough to rival the storm outside, a mix of irritation, rivalry, and something neither of them was willing to name. Elsewhere, Emma Scorpio Drake stood in the doorway of her apartment, glaring at Giovanni Gio Palmieri as he reached for the door without his gloves. She scolded him like a mother hen, refusing to let him step out into the freezing night unprepared. The delay meant they wouldn't make it to Drew's place to help Tracy as planned. When they finally did leave, the road was blocked by fallen branches and drifting snow, forcing them to turn back. What started as frustration quickly turned into something else. Trapped together by circumstance and storm, Emma and Gio found warmth in each other instead. Laughter gave way to lingering looks, and the apartment that had felt two quiet moments before now hummed with energy and passion. The blizzard outside became a distant backdrop as they created their own kind of heat within those four walls. Back at the Quartermaine mansion, the fire roared in the grand living room, a beacon of warmth in the cold, dark night. Charlotte Cassadine arrived, her cheeks flushed from the cold and from anger. She cornered Danny Morgan and poured out what she'd overheard, Nina Reeves talking with Jack Brennan, words that felt like a betrayal of everything Charlotte thought she could trust. She wanted to warn Valentine, to protect her father from whatever was being plotted behind his back. Danny, ever the loyal friend, offered to go with her to Carly's house. He even dug up some of Brooke Lynn's winter clothes to make sure Charlotte was bundled up properly. But just as they were about to leave, a phone alert sounded, advising everyone to shelter in place. The storm had grown too dangerous. Reluctantly, Danny told Charlotte they'd have to wait. The disappointment on her face was clear, but the howl of the wind outside made the decision for them. At General Hospital, Lulu Spencer was on a mission of her own. She was worried about Charlotte, desperate to track her down before the storm made everything worse. She turned to Nathan West for help, mentioning that she'd wanted to check on Butterscotch the horse earlier but hadn't had the chance. Nathan listened carefully, offering reassurance even as his own concern grew. Rocco Falconeri, fresh from finishing his community service, got the news about Charlotte's disappearance. Lulu, not wanting him alone in a dark house if the power went out, sent him to the Quartermain mansion to hang out with Danny. When Rocco arrived, he noticed the fire blazing and, by it, a familiar scarf and a pair of shoes, Charlotte's. But she and Danny were nowhere to be found. The realization sent a chill through him that had nothing to do with the cold. Lulu and Nathan tried to make their way through the storm, but a fallen tree blocked the road, forcing them to take shelter at Bad Gen Cafe. The little place felt like a refuge from the chaos outside, its windows rattling with the wind and snow piling up against the glass. Nathan looked at the weather and then at Lulu, suggesting it seemed like they were stuck there for the night. In the quiet that followed, something shifted between them. The urgency of the situation, the shared concern for Charlotte, and the intimacy of being trapped together created a closeness neither of them had expected. Their conversation softened, their voices lowering as they talked about fears, hopes, and the things they didn't usually say out loud. The storm outside became a cocoon, sealing them off from the world and giving them space to connect in ways that felt both comforting and dangerous. Back at Carly Spencer's attic, the mood was tense but oddly calm. Valentine Cassadine stood alone, his worry for Charlotte etched into every line of his face. Carly admitted what he already suspected: Charlotte was missing and likely trying to make her way there through the storm. Valentine immediately wanted to go out and search for her, but Carly stopped him. The conditions were too dangerous, she argued. He could get lost or hurt, and then Charlotte would have two people in trouble instead of one. To distract him, Carly suggested a game of checkers. It felt almost absurd, sitting down to play a board game while the city braced itself against a blizzard and a missing child loomed over them both. But Valentine agreed, grateful for anything that kept his mind from spiraling into worst-case scenarios. The simple act of moving pieces across a board became a lifeline, a way to hold on to a sense of normalcy in a night that was anything but. At Windmere, the candlelight flickered as Jocelyn and Cullum continued their verbal sparring. Every smile was calculated, every laugh a mask. Jocelyn's mind worked overtime, cataloging every detail, every slip of the tongue. She could feel that Cullum was doing the same, measuring her words against her body language, searching for cracks in her story. Neither of them fully trusted the other, and both of them knew it. As the night wore on, the storm showed no sign of letting up. Snowdrifts climbed higher, roads disappeared, and the city became a maze of isolation and uncertainty. In apartments, mansions, cafes, and castles, people were forced into close quarters, into conversations they'd been avoiding, into confrontations they couldn't escape. Encouraging words were offered like fragile gifts: Portia's plea for forgiveness, Carly's insistence on patience, Nathan's quiet reassurance to Lulu. But angry threats and unresolved tensions simmered just beneath the surface: Tracy and Martin sparring, Charlotte's fury at Nina, the unspoken suspicion between Jocelyn and Cullum. The blizzard became more than just a storm. It was a baptism, washing over Port Charles and its people, stripping away comfort and certainty, leaving behind raw emotion and hard truths. By morning, when the snow finally settled and the world began to dig itself out, nothing would be quite the same. Because in the cold, dark heart of winter, secrets had been whispered, loyalties tested, and bonds forged in fire and ice. And as the first pale light of dawn threatened to break through the clouds, the people of Port Charles would have to face what they'd discovered, about each other, and about themselves.